The next thing to do with fractions is to work with negative fractions. Now that we can add, subtract, multiply and divide with positive fractions, we need to work with negative ones as well. So to do this, we need to combine what we've learnt about operations with fractions with what we know about negative numbers. So we're combining all this knowledge together to figure out negative fractions. Negative fractions. And just like for negative numbers, we can use our number chips method with positive and negative number chips, or we can use the number line method to think about moving up and down the number line. And to practice these, I'll go through a whole lot of examples to see how we can do them. So firstly we have 2/7 plus negative 5/7. So when we're adding and subtracting fractions, we need to have a common denominator, which we do in this case. We're both in sevenths. And then using our knowledge of negative numbers, we're adding some negatives. So we'll use the number chips method for this one. So we have 2 positive number chips, which are sevenths in this case. So we're used to using number chips as whole numbers, but we can use them as fractions too. So we have positive 2/7, and then we're adding 5 negatives. And as always, a positive and a negative cancels, so we're left with 3 negative sevenths at the end, which means the answer to that is negative 3/7. Next we have 2/3 take away negative 4/3. So again, we have a common denominator. We can go straight to finding the answer. And we can remember that subtracting negatives, that's the same as adding. So for this one, we can rewrite it as 2/3 plus 4/3. And with our fraction rules, we know that we have 2/3 and we're adding 4/3, so we add the numerators. So we have 6/3. But always we're looking to simplify. And we can see a common denominator, a common factor that we can divide by is 2. No, is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we have 2 wholes, or just 2. 2 over 1 is 2 wholes, and we can always write that as just 2. Okay, the next one we have is 1/5, and we're adding negative 1/4. So here we don't have a common denominator, and that's the first thing we'll do to solve this one. So to get a common denominator, we can work out what is the lowest common multiple of 5 and 4. And that's going to be 20. So how do we go from 5 to 20? We'll multiply by 4. And what you do to one, you do to the other. And with our negative quarter, we're going to need to multiply by 5 to get to 20. So now we have, as equivalent fractions, 4/20, and we're adding negative 5/20. Since we're adding negatives, we'll use our number chips again. So we have 4 positives, and we're adding 5 negatives. And after the opposites cancel each other out, They all disappear, and we just have one negative left over. So that is the same as negative 1/20. And we can't simplify any further. Another way we could have done that is remembering that adding a negative is the same as subtracting. So we could have said 4/20 is the same as, or 4/20 add negative 5/20. That's the same as taking away 5/20. And that means we're at 4 on the number line, and we're going back by 5, so we're at negative 1. And that gives us the same answer. If we're multiplying, we just need to remember our multiplication rules for fractions. So this one we have 2/3 multiplied by negative 4/5. So we're saying how many lots, or what is 2/3 of negative 4/5? And we could draw our rectangle and try and use a picture, but remember the shortcut method is multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. 2 times 4 is 8, 3 times 5 is 15, 8/15. But remembering our negative number rules, we had a positive number multiplied by a negative, and that means our answer is negative. So the answer was negative 8/15. And if we're dividing, we use all of our rules again. This one is 2/5 divided by negative 3/4. So the dividing fractions rule was keep, switch, flip. Keep, switch, flip. So we keep the first fraction, negative 2/5, switch the sign to a multiply, and flip the second fraction, negative 4/3. And now when we're multiplying, we multiply the top and multiply the bottom. That gives us 8/15. But we also need to think about our negative number rules, and a negative multiplied by a negative makes a positive. So the answer to how many lots of negative 3/4 are in negative 2/5 is 8/15, which is a little bit over half.